Welcome to POKEMMO, where today we're going to be spending 100 in-game days in this multiplayer Pokemon game. POKEMMO is fantastic and features 4 different regions: Kanto, Unova, Hoenn, and Sinnoh as well. There's a fully fledged PvP system with ranks and everything you could ask for, as well as an auction house to trade with other players. So today we're going to be spending 100 in-game days trying to complete at least 2 regions in that time. Let's get started. So our journey begins in Hoenn. I decided Hoenn was going to be where we start from, as it is actually the first region I played when I was a kid. We of course gotta head over to May's house because, well, we gotta talk to her before we get our starter Pokemon. As for starter choices, it's the original Hoenn starters, and well, we're gonna be going for Mudkip. I did this because, well, we like Mudkips. Either way, first up is going to be the Zigzagoon, which we easily destroyed Water Gun. Next up though, well, he wants us to battle May, so we do exactly that. We simply tackle the Trico, and hey, where's she running to, man? Also, this guy looks extremely bald in the game. Then we actually go to our mom, we get the running shoes, and we're right outside of Petalburg, where we decide, okay, it's time to hunt for some Pokemon. First, we capture a Lotad, but we're specifically hunting for a Ralts, and just when I want to give up, I run down into this patch of grass, and guess what? There it is. We actually find a Ralts, which, I'm gonna be real, I really didn't think we were going to be able to get, because the actual encounter rate for Ralts in this game is much lower than in regular Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. It ends up being way higher in this game and way harder to actually get it. Same thing for a lot of things in this game, they're just generally harder. Finding a shiny Pokemon, for example, is extremely difficult. Either way, we're heading into the Petalburg Woods because I also want to get myself a Shroomish. It is one of my personal favorites, so of course, we're going to make sure to catch it and add it to the team. Afterwards, we run into this fella who needs some help dealing with Team Aqua. We defeat, of course, this guy by using Shroomish. We go for the Stun Spore and then as well as the Absorb, and for the most part we do this to make sure that we can guarantee, well, a little bit of damage and also some experience points for our Pokemon. I want to make sure our whole team is relatively leveled out. After defeating him though and getting ourselves a Great Ball, we head up the route and find a Slackoth. I decide, hey, let's capture it, maybe we can have a Slacking later down the line, which is an extremely powerful Pokemon. Then randomly this fellow right here, Runins or Punins, whatever you want to call him, just randomly hits me up and just decides, hey, here's a free Dano for whatever reason. I even messaged him. I literally whispered to him and said, hey, why did you just give me a free Dano? Like, I don't get why. But yeah, he decided to give me a free one. I didn't really know what to do with it because I didn't know if I should use it or not. Didn't know if it was worth it. But hey, we got a free Pokemon and we had our first interaction with someone in the game. Again, he didn't really answer, but that's fine. So we also evolve our boy Mudkip into Marshtomp and head inside of our first gym challenge. It's going to be against Roxanne. Of course, she's rolling with those Rock-type Pokemon. First up's going to be Nosepass. Here we go for the Water Gun, which is able to just do an incredible amount of damage after 2 hits and take down the Nosepass. So now the Nosepass is gone, we have to deal with another Pokemon, which is going to be Aaron. As you may notice, her team is going to be a little bit weird, and some of the teams in this game are going to be much harder than the normal ones that you run into, as you may notice. Geodude is the last Pokemon. Here we go for Shroomish and Marshtomp, just making sure we get some decent damage in there to defeat this thing. After doing that damage, we get ourselves our first gym badge, and now we're going to head over to the next location, which is going to be in Dewford. Before that, though, we make sure to help out this fellow from DevCorp, or I guess Devoncorp, to deal with Team Aqua, because they just stole some stuff as well as a Pico, so we take out this fella's Puccina without too much trouble. He doesn't really stand much of a chance against our Rock Smash, and if you're wondering why we have Rock Smash, it's just the move that our Mudkip had from the start. Either way, we make it over to Dewford City with the help of Mr. Briny and go inside to take on the gym. This is going to be against, of course, none else than Brawly. He uses Fighting-type Pokemon, which we do have a decent amount of, decent amount of stuff to use against. I will be honest, though, it took me a while to get this far. It took a decent amount of time of, actual playtime to be able to defeat this fella because we needed to do quite a lot of grinding. I actually got stuck for a while with the amount of Pokemon we had. We didn't really stand much of a chance still. Either way, eventually we defeat his matchups and we have ourselves another gym badge. We head inside of the Dewford Cave where we run into Steven, and of course, after dealing with him and giving him the letter, it's time to head over to Slateport. Slateport was a nice place. There was a lot of battles here, as you guys may remember from playing Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. There's loads of free battles. Also, we get into a bit of an altercation with one of the Team Aqua grunts at the museum, and then we of course battle against them. These guys don't stand much of a chance. Shroomish has Mega Drain now, which is able to do a decent amount of damage as well, and also keep it alive against something like this freaking Carvana, so it doesn't really stand much of a chance against us. Next up though, we head over to the next route where we run into May, and she has herself a pretty cracked out team. Now, luckily for us, after, well, only really the second try, we are able to take her down. Now we have Psybeam and whatnot on our fellow Psywave, I guess, on our fellas, and we're able to do a lot of damage with the help of Marshtomp, as he does have the Mud Shot and Water Pulse, so taking down the Slugma isn't too much of an issue. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's actually a special battle which you guys can do after, or I guess a, optional battle after you defeat May, or actually after you defeat the Roxanne gym. You can actually battle May again, but if you are playing as Brendan and you chose a specific starter, she will have a Torkoal that she only uses once and never again, which is really weird. Either way, next up, we defeat Wally, and it's time to take on the gym. But before that, we actually evolve our Shroomish into a Breloom, which is one of my personal favorites of all time, so I'm very excited about that. Next up, though, is going to be our third gym battle, which is going to be against Watson. He starts off with a Manectric. We go for the Mud Bomb, which is ridiculously powerful and destroys that thing. Next up is going to be a, well, I guess, a Voltorb, not really much of a problem. We again just go for the Mud Bomb, and for the most part, honestly, we just swept through this with Mud Bomb. Luckily, though, we do have a lot of potions and stuff like that, and we do also rely on Breloom here to Mach Punch the last Pokemon, which is going to be Electrike. However, after this, though, we do go and capture ourselves a Numel. I wanted to have a Fire type on the team, which we were still lacking, and could be useful down the line, especially against some of the stuff we might run into, but I thought, hey, it might be useful just to get it. But we do also get an awesome thing, which is Ralts evolving into Kirlia, which is great, as we now have a slightly stronger Psychic-type Pokemon. After this, we run into Falibor Town, where we run into a Swablu. We capture it, as having another Flying type, or just a Flying type in general on the team, is going to be useful. We also find a Seviper, which I capture, and I'm going to be honest, this Seviper came in clutch during some battles, but we didn't end up using it as much as I wanted to, because at some point here, after we defeat, like, the 4th gym in Lava Ridge, I decide, like, hey, let's actually use the global trade system to actually purchase a few Pokemon that could be useful down the line. But nonetheless, though, we make it up onto the mountain to take on Maxie. We start off with the Water Pulse from Marshtomp, which destroys the Camerupt. Same thing against the Houndoom, and the Mightyena takes a Rock Slide to the face, which does a decent amount of damage. Marshtomp then also is able to destroy Golbat with a Rock Slide, leaving only the Kadabra to be taken down with a Takedown. And then, of course, Mightyena needs to be finished off with the Takedown as well. After dealing with this, though, of course, we run into Archie, who's just telling us some information. We run into our first Horde. Now, this is an interesting thing, though. You actually want to find these hordes in the game because it's a really good method of using to shiny hunt. If you're specifically going to shiny hunt, which is what we do later in the game, it's a best way to actually do it, is to find hordes, as you're able to run into multiple Pokemon and have a higher chance of running into a shiny one in that way. Either way, we then go in and take on the next gym battle. This is going to be against, well, you guys already know her, Flannery. She has herself a freaking Torkoal. We are able to take it down eventually. Then Marshtomp goes for the Water Pulse against the Camerupt, which takes it down. Same thing for the Slugma. It doesn't really stand much of a chance against the water type moves, as they are, well, just going to be generally super effective against them. Same thing for the Numel, and we get ourselves a 4th gym badge. We run into May, and then we decide, hey, it's time to purchase some Pokemon. We get ourselves a Nidorino before we go and take on our dad, Norman. Now, Norman's team was actually relatively easy, I would say. We Mach Punch the way through them, we Double Kick, and we also just spam Mud Bombs against them, and eventually we take them all down, including the Spinda with a Flame Wheel from Numel. So, now we evolve our boy Marshtomp into, of course, none else than Swampert, the big chunky boy, who is really powerful, by the way. And then we make our way to the Weather Institute. Now, in the Weather Institute, we just have a battle against just one of the admins from Team Aqua, and we also evolve Nidorino into a Nidoking because we do have a Moonstone. After this, though, we do run into May. She wants to battle us right before we reach Fortree City. We end up losing, I think, the first try against her, but the second time around, though, we are able to, clutch it out and be able to defeat her. We are able to Mach Punch with Breloom, Rock Slide, defeat and destroy her Pikachu, and the Magcargo doesn't really stand much of a chance against the Surf. Next up is going to be our next gym badge, which is going to be against Winona. She starts off with Altaria, but she does also switch out a lot. However, that doesn't really matter. We go for the Lava Plume here against her Tropius, and Lava Plume again against her freaking Skarmory, finishing it off against the Swellow. Now that we have that gym badge too, we try to use the, I guess, you want to call them berries, seeds, whatever you want to call them in the game, but they don't really work unless you do different combinations. After finishing things on Mount Pyre, we head over to Lily Cove City, and before we do anything, we actually evolve Kirlia into none else than Gardevoir. Now that we have a Gardevoir on the squad, we're ready to take on May, and I'm gonna be real, this battle was insane, okay? First up, we do get a critical hit against the Raichu. The Self-Destruct comes from the Claydol. Mega Horn goes up against the Sceptile. Swellow falls to our Mud Bombs, and same thing goes for Wailord. With only really Magcargo remaining now, we just go for the Surf, and we're able to win. But I'm gonna be real, it was relatively hard. Next up is the Team Magma HQ. We go through it relatively quickly, and then it's time to take on, well, the man, the myth, the legend, Maxie. He, of course, starts off with a Crobat. This thing gets hit by a Muddy Water, which is going to do a decent amount of damage before the Surf comes in to destroy the Alakazam. Then, of course, we have to deal with the same thing against the Houndoom, and not really much can be done by him at this point. We're able to do a lot of damage, and Nidoking is able to destroy with the Mega Horn. After this, though, we have to go over and deal with, Archie and his whole squad. We run into some hordes outside of Tentacool, which Tentacool is actually the easiest Pokemon to get a shiny of in this game, which is why there's a ton of them in the auction house. Either way, we finish up things with Team Aqua and head over to Moss Deep City. Here, we're going to have ourselves our penultimate, or second to last, if you want to call it, gym badge, which is going to be against Tate and Lisa. Tate and Lisa do double battles, so this is going to be a relatively difficult one for us because they have some Pokemon that can just be really annoying. However, the battle ended up being pretty okay, not gonna lie. It wasn't super difficult. We didn't really have to rebattle him after the first try, if I remember correctly, but we do have the Surf, which does do damage to, of course, every Pokemon, including our own, and then Altaria comes in clutch with the Dragon Pulse, because yes, we have an Altaria now, our Swablu has evolved by this point, and Zatsu does do some annoying stuff with the Heat Wave, but it doesn't really do much against us. We go for the Calm Mind on Gardevoir, trying to set up to do, as much damage as possibly we can with our special attack moves. However, we go out with Swampert to finish things up using Surf, which is exactly what happens. We destroy Tate and Lisa, but that's not all that has to be done. We still have a lot left to do on this journey. One of those things is to go and deal with Team Aqua and Team Magma up in the Moss Deep Space Station. Here we help Steven out by going into a double battle, and I'm gonna be real with you guys, I didn't do anything. I actually lost all 3 of my Pokemon in this battle, and he ended up actually clutching it out and winning it for us. His freaking Pokemon, like his Aggron, did everything by head smashing through his whole team, or their whole team, which was the only reason we won that battle. Now, once we sorted those things out, I decided, hey, it's time to buy ourselves some in-game items, so I purchased a butler outfit because, hey, we like to look fancy, alright? We just like to look fancy, and this outfit makes us look fancy. Also, you may have noticed we have candy corn horns because I thought they looked cool. Either way, we now have Dive, and so we go inside of the cave here and deal with, of course, Archie. He has a Crobat. We go for the, well, I guess, Dragon Pulse against the Sharpedo because he does end up switching out, and that's one thing you'll notice in these battles is they often switch out Pokemon. They non-stop do switch outs, and their teams are way stronger than the ones in the original game. So their teams will be way stronger, and sometimes they will use teams for, the most OP version of their teams will be used. Either way, now that we made it over to Rayquaza up on Skypillar, we're able to summon him over to Sotopolis City to deal with, of course, Kyogre and Groudon. After doing all of this, we then go up the next day and are ready to take on the final gym badge. We see a bunch of trainers there by the water. What they're doing is actually shiny hunting for Magikarp, as there is Magikarp, I guess horde spawns there specifically, so a lot of people are hunting for those because it's one of the easiest ones to go for, and it's close to a Pokemon Center in case you need to reset your PP on Sweet Scent. Either way, now that we've dealt with that, we go and take on Juan. Of course, his team doesn't really stand much of a chance against us. I will be honest though, it was a bit of a struggle in the beginning until I figured out a way to actually get through it. We make it over to Evergrande City and of course the Victory Road. Here we're going to be able to battle against Wally. You guys know Wally, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who just likes to bother me all the time. But fear not, his Magnezone doesn't really stand much of a chance. The Mud Bomb comes in. He does have Sturdy, I think, but it doesn't really make a difference at this point. We go in and destroy him with Psychic from, well, all of our Pokemon. We have a Metagross as well now, which I purchased from the shop. And so we finally reached the Elite Four. Now, the first Elite Four member in this case is going to be the easiest one. It is up against this fella, and he doesn't really stand much of a chance. I'm gonna be real. He doesn't really stand much of any chance because we're able to use Crobat, which we also purchased from the, I guess, in-game shop or the auction. We purchased him from there, from another player, and are using him, and we just simply need to spam any of our, I guess, bug-type moves and just cross-poison and stuff like that, and we're able to take him down with the help of just Crobat and Nidoking. So, the first battle is an easy one. However, next up is going to be Phoebe, and she uses Ghost type, so we go for the Bite here while using Crobat. We're able to do a decent chunk of damage just using Crobat and be able to take down most of the team, but it's not enough because he does fall eventually, so we use Weavile and we use Nasty Plot and then Punishment to take down the rest of the team by kind of hyping and, boosting ourselves up. However, I make a mistake by using Nasty Plot too many times and end up just losing our boy there. So Waterfall from Swampert has to come through to do the work instead, which it does, and so we're able to now take on the next battle. In this case, she goes for, I guess, Glalie right off the bat and just uses Explosion, which is not fun because we take a lot of damage. Her Frostlats, though, doesn't really stand much of a chance because we just spam Punishment, which is incredibly powerful. Rock Smash against the next Glalie does also come through, and guess what? We got ourselves another victory. Next up, though, is going to be Drake. He, of course, is using Dragon-type Pokemon. We destroy him with the Blizzard from our boy here, Weavile, which we do twice. Then we got to deal with Salamence, which ended up being a really big problem, and it was actually the reason I had to rebattle the Elite Four multiple times. And we had to do then a bunch of ways of making money in the game to be able to afford a bunch of revives and stuff, because otherwise we just couldn't beat him. Next up, though, is the battle against, well, the man you guys all know, it's Wallace. Here in this case, we have Crobat again doing a lot of the work. We go for the Cross Poison. I just honestly, the Cross Poison is all we really do. It does most most of the damage and is able to do most of the actual, clutching through this whole battle. Also, X-Scissor, I can't really deny, we ended up using that move quite a lot as well, but Cross Poison takes down a Gyarados, and there it is. We defeated the first region, or at least a champion of the first region, so we're done with the first location. However, like I said, we can go through multiple regions in this game, so I decide, hey, let's go and explore a little bit. But before we do any of that, though, we actually find an alpha, I guess raid is the wrong word to use, but basically an alpha horde, because there's a bunch of outbreaks of alpha Pokemon. Now, alpha Pokemon, you guys may remember them from Pokemon Legends Arceus, not Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but Legends Arceus, where they specifically are Pokemon that are stronger than, normal ones. And what you see right here is a bunch of players trying to get their hands on these alpha Pokemon, because if you can get a shiny one, then you have a really cracked out Pokemon. You can see there's an alpha swarm that's been spotted on Route 112, which is where we currently are. Now, after dealing with that, we decide, okay, let's check out the PvP section, because this game does have PvP rewards for you competing in different PvP. There is like OU, UU, etc. There's also random battles, which are my personal favorites. However, I ended up losing every time I tried, and then I decided, okay, well, we're done here. Let's go over to Kanto. It's time to explore another region. So now that we're in Kanto region, well, we get ourselves, of course, a starter Pokemon. It's going to be Bulbasaur, but I make a decision, which is kind of maybe a weird one. I decide, okay, let's actually make this a bit more fun. We have a bunch of money left from the other, journey, so let's buy every single starter Pokemon from this region, right? So that would be Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander, and Pikachu. I decided let's use those guys for this journey and just use all the starter Pokemon because it would be fun. So first up is, of course, going to be none else than Brock himself. The man is just ready to take us on. He doesn't really stand much of a chance. We go for the Wine Whip, which does a lot, but it's not enough to defeat him, so Bubble from Squirtle is necessary to finish up this battle, which it does exactly against the Onix. Next up, though, of course, he has the Geodude. Same thing here. We go for Bubble. He does have Sturdy, which means he's going to survive on 1 HP, which is just annoying more than anything. We know we're going to win this battle, no matter what, because we do have both the Bulbasaur and the Squirtle in our squad, but eventually we defeat him, and now we have ourselves another gym badge, which is our first gym badge in Kanto. As we're about to leave, we get ourselves running shoes and evolve our boy Bulbasaur into Ivysaur, of course, because, well, what else would it evolve into? After doing that, we then make it over to Cerulean City. We make sure to heal ourselves up before we go and take on Misty, who uses, of course, water-type Pokemon. Now, her team starts off with a Psyduck. In this case, we go for the Razor Leaf, which is able to do a lot of damage and take down the Psyduck in a singular hit, and it's super effective. We get confused, though, by the Starmie, so that ends up being a little bit of a problem, but the Razor Leaf and the Seed Bomb are enough to defeat the Starmie at this point, leaving only one more Pokemon to deal with, and that's going to be Goldeen. Now, Goldeen, same thing here. We don't really take much damage from it. Seed Bomb is honestly just enough to take it down, with a singular hit being super effective enough to defeat it and give us, I guess, the second gym badge of Kanto, but our, I guess, 10th gym badge in total. Either way, Charmander evolves into Charmeleon, so now we have a stronger Pokemon, especially against the battle that's about to come. It's going to be on the Nugget Bridge. You guys already know it. It's against Gary or Blue, whatever you really want to call him. Actually, let me know in the comment section down below, guys. Do you call him Gary or Blue, or do you just refer to the version based on what you are playing or watching or consuming? Like, if you're playing the games, maybe you call him Blue. Maybe if you're watching the anime, you call him Gary, like what he's called in the anime. And if you're reading the manga, maybe you call him Blue as well, or Green. I don't really know. People really have different names for him. Either way, this battle ended up being relatively okay. Then we make it over to Vermilion City, and I realize, oh hey, we can already travel back to other regions from this port. But I decide, okay, let's not do that. Instead, let's take on Gary again. And this time around, though, we're able to defeat him. We go for the takedown, we go for the takedown again, and we just keep spamming Flamethrower from Charmeleon for the rest of the squad. And I'm going to be real, Charmeleon ended up being kind of our strongest Pokemon throughout. Like, we started off really good with the Ivysaur and everything, but eventually he became our clutch Pokemon. Either way, next up is Lieutenant Surge. He starts off with the Voltorb. This thing doesn't really stand much of a chance against the flamethrowers that come through, so we're able to just kind of destroy him with that. However, he does have citrus berries on all of them, and this is, again, another thing you will notice in this game, is that all the freaking gym leaders and the Elite Four use really, like, cracked out stuff on their Pokemon. Like, they will have really cracked out movesets, like proper competitive movesets on these things, which makes them way stronger than your usual challenge against a gym leader. It feels more like you're playing a hard mode of a game. Nonetheless, though, I decide, okay, I'm gonna go back to Hoenn because I want to do some shiny hunting. Now, let me explain what I do here. Basically, the way things work in PokeMMO with shiny hunting is that the actual chance of you finding a shiny is 1 in 30,000, which is ridiculous, by the way. It's a really, really, really low chance of you finding a shiny Pokemon. So what people do is horde hunting. To do this, all you really need is, well, Sweet Scent, which is a move that will basically summon, more or less, 5 Pokemon or hordes, and then they will spawn for you. So what you gotta do is just full odds it, right? You gotta try to full odds. But as you might notice, I also have donator status, which is basically by donating and supporting the game, you gain basically a 10% chance boost of actually getting a shiny Pokemon. And you can also buy a shiny charm, which gives another 10% of a boost. However, after trying for a very, very, very long time, I'm gonna be real, I got no shiny and I gave up. So after giving up, they decided, okay, back to Kanto it is. Let's go and finish up this journey in the Kanto region because we're not really gonna get lucky with the shinies, so I might as well just continue our journey for now. So we head over to, I guess, Celadon City to take on Erica and her grass types. First up on her end, of course, is going to just be a mix of Pokemon. She starts off and sends out her freaking... Oh, dude, I hated this thing so much. So she sends out a freaking Blossom. Now, I end up not being able to defeat it with the first move, which was Wing Attack, which I thought was going to be enough, but it really wasn't. So now that we have Charizard, because Charmeleon has evolved by this point, we go for the Flamethrower, and it's able to finally defeat her. So, next up though is going to be the Tangela. Here we go for Flamethrower again. It is pretty much a one-hit KO. Then we also do the same thing against the rest of the team. Victory Bell doesn't really stand much of a chance, and I guess he's just kind of depressed now that he doesn't really have, I guess, Jesse and James to really hang out with. And Vileplume doesn't really stand much of a chance either. Now that we defeated her, we can have Pokemon obey us up to level 46, and we can also make our way to the next location. But as I'm on my way to defeat Team Rocket and Giovanni, this random guy just decides, hey, let me battle you. ZBC MNB decides, okay, I want to have a Wi-Fi battle against you. So I say yes, but I'm gonna be real. This was a mistake by me because I did not have a proper competitive team, whereas I think this guy did. His team seemed pretty cracked out and he seemed to know what he does. And I'm gonna be real, I'm not very good at competitive battling. I am extremely bad at competitive battles, so just bear with me as I'm saying that. Either way, next up is going to be Giovanni. Here we go for the Air Slash with Charizard. Air Slash is honestly the move we ended up using most during Kanto and most of our battles, as we're able to Air Slash through most of the team. Flamethrower does come in clutch as well against the Nidorino, but after that, we defeated Giovanni, and now we can head over to the next location. We run through, of course, Saffron City because we were able to find the tea and give it already to the police guard, and then it's time to defeat our rival again. We go for the Air Slash to go through most of his team, and that's exactly what does the work, right? Finishing off most of them with just Air Slash and Flamethrower. Leaving us now with a giant Snorlax in the way that I decide to capture, because Snorlax is a cool Pokemon. It's one of those Pokemon that fits into our team as like one of those like standard, I'm gonna be real, our team is very basic, okay? It's a bunch of starter Pokemon, but I think it's fun, all right? I enjoy it. I'm one of those people. Now it's time to take on Koga as we make our way to Fuchsia City. His Weezing self-destructs, which takes itself out and also takes out our Snorlax. We go for the Flamethrower, which defeats the Muck, leaving us with the Crobat to go up against, as well as the Venomoth. But Venomoth, of course, goes down to a single Flamethrower. Also, Venomoth is a weird Pokemon, man. It always felt like weird how it looks compared to its pre-evolutions and stuff, and Butterfree versus it. They feel like they should have been switched. Either way, we make it into the Silphco headquarters. Here we deal, of course, with our rival as well as Giovanni, who doesn't really stand much of a chance. He has a Honchkrow, which I think is a Pokemon he uses later down the line. I'm pretty sure he uses that in, like, I would guess Generation 4 games. He doesn't use it before that, I'm pretty sure. But either way, he also has a Kangaskhan. In this case, we take it down with not more than just a bunch of Flamethrowers as well as a bunch of Air Slashes. Now we're going to go and take on Sabrina. She is, I guess, one of the last few. We only have 3 gym leaders left to go, which is Sabrina, of course, Blaine, and Giovanni himself. In her team, we got Jinx up first. We go for the Flamethrower. We go for the Air Slash against the Slowbro. Flamethrower again on the Alakazam. And same thing for the Espeon. Flamethrower also destroys the Mr. Mime, and so we've gotten ourselves one of our last few badges. Now we head over to, I guess, Cinnabar Island. This is where we have to go and take on Blaine. He uses a bunch of Fire-type Pokemon, and so I decided to purchase myself a Gengar, because I thought, hey, let's get a Gengar into the team. We don't really have a lot of variety, so let's get something else in there, and that's what we did. So, with the help of Gengar and a bunch of Air Slashes from Charizard, we take down his whole squad in relative ease. Next, though, is the final gym badge. This is going to be against the man you guys all know. It's Giovanni. So, here's his squad. We go for Aqua Tail from Blastoise onto his Dugtrio, which takes it down. Next up is going to be Aqua Tail against the Nidoqueen. Same thing here. We're able to do a ridiculous amount of damage, but it's not enough. So, Venusaur comes with a Seed Bomb against the Rhyperior, which does almost half its HP, which is incredible, and eventually does take it down. Blastoise comes back out against the Nidoking and destroys it in the end, and then Blastoise also finishes off the Rhydon. So, we have our last gym badge, which means now it's time for the Elite Four, baby. Okay, so we go up here, and of course, our our best friend, Gary, is here ready to fight us. We start off with the Air Slash against the Leafeon, which I didn't even realize he was going to use a Leafeon of all things. I just kind of shocked me. I would have actually expected more of an Umbreon in this case, because it feels like a more iconic evolution for him in this case. But either way, doesn't really matter. Air Slashing through the rest of his squad is all we really need to do, as he doesn't really stand much of a chance. And now that we've Air Slashed through that squad, it's time to take on the Elite Four of this region, which of course is going to be I guess an Elite Four you guys have seen many times before, and that I've battled many times before. Lorelei starts off with the Cloyster. We Air Slash it in the beginning. We then Air Slash also on top of the rest of the full team, man, leaving only really Dugong to be defeated by a bunch of Seed Bombs from Venusaur, which was perfect. And I also decided to purchase a bunch of items like Leftover, Choice Scarves, Choice Bands, and stuff like that I equipped onto our team. Like, for example, in this case, our Charizard, I think, is Choice Scarved and is not able to use, more than one move at a time. So we then use Gengar with Hypnosis as well as Dream Eater, because it puts him to sleep, and then we're able to do a ridiculous amount of damage. Flamethrower is enough though from I guess Charizard to take down the Steelix, and same thing against the Hitmonlee, which we're able to also get the burn on, so it doesn't stand much of a chance. Next up though is going to be, well, it's going to be Agatha. Her team though is a little annoying. We go for the Dark Pulse here, starting things off with our Gengar, which is able to do a lot of damage. However, she has a Gengar as well, and I'm gonna be real, this Gengar took forever to defeat, but eventually we take him down with Charizard. We go for Heavy Slam with our boy Snorlax, which is taking down the Arbok, leaving really only two Pokemon here. The first one is, of course, Crobat. The next one is Weezing, which both fall. Eventually, though, we reach Lance. He is, of course, going to be the last Elite Four member. His Aerodactyl took forever to defeat, but eventually we took it down, and then it's mostly just relying on Gengar as well as Charizard to Air Slash and Shadow Ball their way through his team, leaving only really Blue left now. And of course, he has himself a Pidgeotto. He has, as well as, I guess, the same team we've seen before, right? The Rhyperior, the Alakazam, all that sort of stuff. And eventually we defeat all of them as well with just the help of, I guess, Snorlax, Charizard, and the rest of them. Eventually I also decide, hey, let's try out some, I guess, competitive battles, because the game does have PvP as mentioned previously. But I'm gonna be real, I am really bad at competitive battling. I did not stand a chance, so I decided to let's go to Unova instead and do a bit of exploring, but at this point, that's where the journey is going to end.